Good afternoon. My name is Maureen Strickland, and I'm the Social Enterprise Development Specialist for the Social Enterprise and Entrepreneurship One Social Enterprise Partnership in the Northern region of Ontario. This workshop is looking at the decision-making process to go from your idea to go or no-go, how to start a viable social enterprise. I have also with me today Zach Lowe. He's a research assistant here at Nordic. If you have any questions, you can write them in the chat box and we'll make sure to answer them. So this webinar follows on from the earlier webinar on the basics of Social Enterprise 101. This webinar should take about 30 minutes. So, as we do with all our webinars, just give you an overview of the Northern Regional Partnership. Nordic Institute is the lead for the partnership. We are an community economic development research organization based at Algoma University and affiliated with the Community Economic and Social Development Program. We have members of the One Network on our steering committee. So the Timmins Small Business Enterprise Center sits on the steering committee as a representative of the small business enterprise centers. The representative for the regional innovation centers is Northwest Innovation Center out of North Bay. The representative for the Campus Linked Accelerators is ULaunch out of Sault Ste. Marie. And we also partner with another nonprofit, Perro Center for Women's Enterprise, based out of Thunder Bay. The partnership itself is funded by the Ontario Ministry of Economic Development and Growth with the goal of supporting social enterprises and social entrepreneurs by providing service providers in the region with the tools and resources so that they can work directly with social enterprises in their community. And our service area for Northern Ontario stretches from Parry Sound to the Manitoba border, including the James Bay coast and all areas in between. So as we always discuss at the beginning of each of these webinars, what is a social enterprise? This is the partnership's definition of a social enterprise. Social enterprises have a mission to address social, environmental, economic, or cultural challenges by reinvesting profits above operational expenses back into their mission and using a triple bottom line to measure their success. So in relation to taking your idea to a go, no-go decision, you'll see here that you're going to need to be reinvesting your profits above the operational expenses back into making that impact on your initial mission, which means you have to have a viable enterprise to do that. And this webinar will talk you through things you need to think about in order to determine if it makes sense to continue on into business planning, etc. If there is a good chance that your social enterprise will be a viable business. So as we know, social enterprise is not a business form. It needs to take on a traditional business form, including nonprofit, cooperatives, sole proprietorships, partnerships, etc. So just a very quick overview of this as we discussed it in Social Enterprise 101. And this is around the idea generation. So how can social enterprises help Northern Ontario? New approaches are needed to respond to community needs. So if you have an idea that you feel could be a social enterprise, it's very possibly coming out of an unmet need in your community. And if you meet the need and you have a viable enterprise, you'll be able to contribute to the local economy as well. Depending on your social enterprise, it may or may not be able to be formed with little capital. One common social enterprise is called an employment social enterprise, and this is where a business is created that meets a need in the community, but the mission is to employ people who face barriers to employment in that business. So sometimes, as an example, you'll see this, somebody, a bakery might start and they'll employ people who face barriers to work in the bakery. In order to be viable, you need to have some profits or break even. And the circulation of money to run your business very likely will be reinvested into both the community and your business itself. Nonprofits have looked at developing social enterprises to help raise money to cover their operational costs. And as well, when you're starting to think about this enterprise, it's good to start thinking about how you may track your impact, track your success, track how you're making a difference in your community. So, how do social enterprises fit into the economy? And this speaks to the business form you're going to take. We'll get more into that in a second. So nonprofit organizations, they don't have a business model. They're not profiting from a sale of a service or a product. Typically, their operations are funded by charitable funds or grants, and they always have to have a board of directors. Mission-driven businesses, these are ones that are more about doing some corporate social responsibility. They do profit from the sale of a service or a product, but all of their profit above operational costs goes to either their shareholders or to grow their business. They may donate to a charity that they believe in. They may do some volunteer in the community, but they are not a social enterprise because that is not the main reason for their being, and that is not where all their profits are going. And then, of course, we have your typical for-profit business that's making a profit for the owner or the partners, etc. And you know, they're meeting a need in the community, but they're not reinvesting their profits back into addressing a larger social, environmental, cultural, economic issue. So back to social enterprises. Again, the core drive for starting these enterprises is wanting to make a difference and tackle a social problem or an environmental issue, etc. They have a business because they profit from a sale of a service or product. They're making money out in the open market, and they're reinvesting this money back into that impact, back into making a stronger impact. So they can be a not-for-profit, a cooperative, a sole proprietorship, or a limited partnership. So we're just going to talk a little bit about forms of business and what you need to think about when you're thinking about your idea. So we have a worksheet here for you to work through, the business forms worksheet. So as you know, a sole proprietorship is one it's you. You are the sole proprietorship. You're running the social enterprise. A nonprofit doesn't mean you don't make any profit, but all the profits go back into maintaining your nonprofit and achieving the impact. And you know, you're making money to pay your staff, to pay your operational expenses, etc. You would have a board of directors for this type of business. A cooperative is a member-owned business. One member, one vote. It's a democratic form of business, and you would also have a board for that type of business. And then a limited partnership would be if you were in partnership with somebody else. So what are the considerations that you need to think about when you're looking at your idea? Who do you imagine is making the social enterprise decisions? If you imagine that you're making all those decisions, then you're very likely a sole proprietorship. Are your customers also owners of the social enterprise? So for instance, are you forming a food co-op and you're imagining that all the consumers of that food would be involved in the enterprise? Well, maybe then you're forming a cooperative, a consumer cooperative. Is engagement and input of your community critical to the success of the social enterprise, both in terms of achieving its social mission and being financially viable? So for instance, if you were meeting, say, a social need in the community and you needed to have good relationships with various public organizations in the community to help support your clients. Let's say you're starting an employment social enterprise. So maybe you want somebody from Ontario Works on your board. Maybe you want somebody from the local community college, somebody involved in training, that type of thing. So if you really feel that community input and connections over the long term is critical to the success of your social enterprise that you're imagining, you might want to consider a non-for-profit because then you'll have the board of directors. And then, of course, if you've been dreaming of making this impact with somebody else for a while, you both are on the same page, you might want to consider a partnership. You will need a partnership agreement, etc. So this worksheet helps you kind of sort out, answer these questions, helps you sort out what form of business you may or may not take. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to assess your market. And we do have some worksheets for that, but I'll just go through these two elements. First, you're going to assess the external factors, the environment in which you're going to open your social enterprise. You're going to look at the age and demographics, income, etc., of the community in which you're going to open your social enterprise. You're going to look at economic trends in the community, social trends, technological. There might be ways you can run your business online, for instance, that weren't available a few years ago. Shift in political environment. Maybe there's been a new provincial government, or maybe there's been a change in the priorities of your municipality. So you need to look at that, how it might affect your social enterprise. And you're also going to look at competition. I think here one of the key things are the external social factors, because that's where you might see, and the political factors, that's where you might see where a community need can be met, that you could build a social enterprise around. You're also, during the market assessment, going to analyze who your customers are. Are you selling direct to a consumer? Are you selling wholesale? Why would a customer purchase from you? Who are these customers? So here's a worksheet to help you work through that. So you're going to look first at the external factors, as we discussed on the first page, and then on the second page, you're going to look at your target customer, your target market. You know, why are they purchasing from you? What are the major criteria they use to make a purchasing decision? And how many potential customers do you actually have? Now, this information is going to help you build a more accurate cash flow forecast, which we'll also get into in a second. So if we just go back here for a second, at the top of each page, we have a space for your social mission and a space for social enterprise. And this is to reinforce the notion that you might have a strong social mission, but you also have to have a strong business model to make sure that you achieve the impact you want on your social mission. So at the top of all of our worksheets, we like you to think about this every time, and then outline your social enterprise here will help you also analyze more accurately the sort of business feasibility factors we're going through here today. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to analyze and assess your competition. You want to look at all the similar competitors in the area in which you plan to have your social enterprise. So maybe it's on the same street in your town, maybe it's regionally, depends on your social enterprise. You want to look at trends. Are you getting more and more competitors, or are people dropping out of this service or product? And you want to evaluate how you envision your social enterprise from the point of view of the customer and compare that to the competition. And all of this is going to help you put your service or product, position it in a way that a customer will purchase from you rather than a competitor. So we have another worksheet for this, and this basically is you analyzing your social enterprise against these factors with your competitors. So you definitely need to do that, because it could turn out that there's too many competitors and there's no niche for you at this point in this sector where you're planning on having your social enterprise. So you also need to think about other operational considerations. Can you run everything yourself, or are you going to need to hire people? And if you are going to need to hire people, are they part-time or are they full-time? What kind of skills do they need? How much are they going to cost? When do they need to come on? And this is all going to be useful information when you do your accurate cash flow. You're also going to need to look at product requirements. If you are making something that has some kind of production involved, you need to figure out all the steps, and as well as any equipment you might need. If you need to bring in supplies, who are those suppliers? What are their terms? Are they nearby? Will you get things on time? all of that kind of consideration. Also, you need to consider distribution, especially here in Northern Ontario. Distributing your product could be quite costly, so you need to cost that out. That could be a deal breaker, or it might make you revamp how you package things, for instance. Also, you need to look at all the government regulations in relation to your social enterprise to make sure that you can abide by them, and also to see that if you need to do certain things to abide by them, that you've costed that out. If that costs some money, it needs to be noted. Also, you need to look at your business support that you have. If you're opening a cooperative or a not-for-profit, it's very likely that you will look for certain board members who have specific experience. Maybe they need legal, financial, human resources, etc. If you're opening a sole proprietorship, it would be great for you to have made some relationships with your small business enterprise center, for instance, a bookkeeper, possibly a lawyer, that kind of thing, mentors, etc. And you're also going to need to do a 3-year cash flow projection as part of this go, no-go process. So we have a worksheet here for these other business considerations, these other operational considerations. So you've got your personnel, your product requirements, suppliers, distribution, government regulations, business support, and financials. And then, of course, you can jot down a few notes too about what you found when you were researching your market and the competition. Now, cash flow projections. What you need to do here is you need to do a monthly on a monthly basis for 3 years, your cash flow. So that is your revenue and your expenses. The more detail and the more research you do for the prior worksheets in terms of the market, the customers, the competition, the operational expenses, the more accurate this cash flow projection is going to be, which means that the outcome and the no-go answer will be more accurate. So here we have a template for a typical cash flow where you have your cash from sales, you have other cash that might be injected. Maybe you are investing your own money at certain points in the first few years. Also, if you take out a loan, you note those. And then under disbursements, you have, if you're purchasing the business, your ongoing costs, your rent, your labor, your own salary, materials and supplies, paying back a loan, etc. And you do this for 3 years. Now, typically for a startup, your first year, you might have a loss, but after 3 years, if you're still showing a loss, you don't have a viable business. And this also helps you, especially if you're a seasonal business, determine months where you don't have any income, and you can see that the money you made when you were busy is going to cover that or not. During startup, there might be places where you need some working capital. So doing this cash flow forecast, definitely important part of making this go, no-go decision. So what do we look at for the go, no this decision-making process? Well, we have a chart to help you make that decision. So first of all, is there a market for your product and service? If there is, keep going. Is there a niche in the competition landscape for your product and service? Meaning, maybe there are a lot of competitors, but that doesn't mean that you can't position yourself to gain some of that market. So if it's go, keep going. Are all the operational requirements doable at startup? Maybe the business that you, or the enterprise you've developed, is so expensive to start up that you're not going to be able to do it. Then you're a no-go. But if you can, keep going. This is really important, and it's very key and something that people don't maybe spend as much time considering as they should. If your business model requires a board, are there appropriate people to become your first directors? So this would apply to the cooperative model or the not-for-profit. And starting a business is a difficult task, not for the faint of heart. If you have a board, you want people on that board who can assist you in this startup phase. Sometimes people have a great idea, they need a board, and they just get their friends, and that's a recipe for disaster. You need people with certain skills on that board So if you don't have a good, strong board, I would suggest you're in a no-go position at this point. Maybe you reconsider, maybe you don't pick a business form that requires a board. Okay, moving along, if it's still a go, you're looking at, you assess your cash flow projections. Are they positive over the 3 years? If there's working capital issues, can you find that capital from somewhere? If all of that looks good, then it's a go. And then the last thing you want to ask yourself, so at this point, you know you have a viable enterprise. The last thing you want to ask yourself, will you have a positive impact on the social mission you're addressing? Now, through this feasibility, you might have had to tweak things in a way that makes your enterprise viable, but you no longer are having that impact that you really thought you were having. Well, you might choose to go ahead, but you're going ahead as a normal business. You are no longer a social enterprise. And that's good to know, because it means that you're not going to waste your time looking for potential capital down the road from social enterprise funds, because you're not actually a social enterprise. But if you still are, if you manage to come up with a viable business idea that can also make that impact, then you are a social enterprise that is ready to move on to the next phase. And the next phase would be to do more business planning. So you would have, to determine your go-no, you would have completed all these worksheets. Give some more thought to your governance structure. Maybe you thought you were going to be a not-for-profit, but it makes sense that that's not actually going to be a great idea, so you make those adjustments. Then you go into full business planning mode, which will start up, which we will discuss in the startup webinar, which is the next one in this series. And you're also going to assess through your cash flow forecast, your capitalization requirements, see if you have the money to get going. And the other thing, this can take quite a while, so it's very important that you circle back and make sure that key variables haven't changed to such an extent that the idea is no longer a go. Now, I just want to review some of our other resources that we have. We have a great new webpage, www.seethechange.ca, and much of what you'll see on this page you can find PDF downloads for various toolkits, as well as links to all of the members, all of the One members in Northern Ontario, web links, and other web links also to a lot of social enterprises in Northern Ontario to give you inspiration. We do have upcoming webinars in this series. After this, there is a startup webinar, a scale-up webinar, a couple of webinars on peer mentoring, an overview of our webpage, a webinar on measuring your impact, as well as community asset mapping webinar. So another thing to bring to your attention, we are holding social enterprise regional roundtables in Kenora at the end of January 2019, and also in Timmins at the end of February 2019. These roundtables are for social entrepreneurs, business development officers, economic development officers, everybody interested in this concept. It's an opportunity to network and learn through workshops and panels, etc. And we're also developing some peer mentors to assist social entrepreneurs in the North. We do have a survey link, if you wouldn't mind finding that on our webpage, clicking on it and doing a short evaluation of this webinar. That would be very much appreciated. And if you have any other questions for us, you can access us through the webpage, or you can also send us an email to info@seethechange.ca. So Zach, do we have any questions? Okay, so we have a question about where a person would go to access sort of background research on when they're assessing their market, so demographic research, that type of thing. You need to go to your local small business enterprise center. They have access to that type of information, and they can guide you to where you can get it, and their business development officers can help you with this basic feasibility work. So it looks like there are no other questions, so I'm going to sign off. Thank you for attending this webinar today.